Hi everybody, I'm Mike, and today Robin and I are going to show you how to remove old wallpaper and hang new wallpaper like a pro. Whether you're refreshing a single wall or giving an entire room a new look, we'll walk you through the process step by step.
We'll cover everything from removing old wallpaper and prepping your walls to choosing the right type of wallpaper and installing it. By the end of this workshop, you'll have all the information needed to transform your space. Let's get started.
Here's what we'll cover today. Different methods on how to remove old wallpaper, prepping the walls for new wallpaper, hanging new wallpaper, some different styles and types of wallpaper, and all the tools and materials you'll need to complete this project. At the end, we'll answer some frequently asked questions and provide a full summary of what we've learned today.
We're also going to share some tips and tricks and even some common mistakes to avoid. And don't worry, there'll be plenty of helpful demos along the way. Oh, and Mike, I tried to hang wallpaper myself, but it just didn't stick. I don't think I was adhering to the instructions.
Probably not. That's what happens. That's a good one though, Rob. Now, before we jump into removing the wallpaper, let's talk safety. Be sure to turn off the electricity if you're working around outlets or light fixtures. Wear safety goggles, gloves, and a dust mask when dealing with old wallpaper or chemicals.
Now, before you remove the old wallpaper, start by clearing out the room of any furniture, wall decorations, any fixtures that are hanging on the wall.
Also, wipe down the walls to remove dust and debris. If the wallpaper has peeling edges, try peeling as much of those off as you can by hand. You can use a putty knife to lift stubborn edges, being careful not to damage the drywall in the back.
Depending on your wallpaper type, you may need to use one or more of these methods, either scraping for loose wallpaper that peels off easily, steaming, which is best for stubborn wallpaper or those tough vinyl coated types, or a chemical remover. We prepared a wall for you here in the studio to show you different methods to remove wallpaper.
Let's go.
Okay?
Okay, so we're going to start with what is probably the easiest approach to removing wallpaper, and hopefully, if yours comes off as well and as easily as we think this is going to, this is probably the way you're going to do it. And that's just simply peeling and scraping. We're just going to try to work the corner up a little bit. If you run into an issue where you can't really get it started, you can use some kind of a tool just to kind of pry that up a little bit.
Just be careful when you're doing this step. You don't want to gouge the drywall. You want to keep that knife or putty knife at about a 45-degree angle so you don't dig out any of the drywall underneath.
Yeah, and depending on how old your wallpaper is, it might start to rip and fall apart as you do this, even if it's coming off easily. But ours, thankfully, is staying intact. But you want to do it just in little pieces and pull from close to the wall. The further away from the wall you get, the more likely you are to tear the paper.
True.
But I'm just pulling it a little at a time off the actual wall. So this is working pretty well.
Don't rush this step, right? Because if you rip it, it's going to be harder to get another edge to pull up. So as long as you've got a good edge, take your time and peel it off. You'll notice with ours, okay, that the actual printed front is coming off, but the backing is staying on the wall. That's okay. We can use our other methods like the steaming and the chemical peel, and then we don't have to worry about getting through that printed layer, which is sometimes hard to do. So we can just go ahead and see how much of this we can, you can see it kind of flexes a little bit too.
Yep. So that's working pretty well, and if you're lucky, yours is going to come off as easily. Also, like Robin said, since the backing's staying on there, if you try to take that off, it's probably not going to come off evenly. You're going to have a mess. You're going to have a lot of cleanup to do to try to get that smooth and clean. So like she said, it's best just to leave that on if yours comes off like this.
Right. Now, if you're going to paper over and all of your wallpaper comes off and leaves that backing really tightly adhered to the wall, we can paper over that, right?
Yep.
We can wallpaper over that. We'll talk about that when we're adding paper. Now, if not, and you need to get that off, now we're going to move on to the next step, and that would be steaming.
Yep.
Right? We're going to try steaming first. Now, if you don't have a steamer, you can rent a wallpaper steamer at Home Depot, which is what we've done. So you're going to want to take your steamer and we just hold it up to the paper about 10, maybe 15 seconds. You don't want to hold it too long. If you hold it up too long, it's going to saturate the drywall, and we definitely do not want that. So you just kind of hold it up over there. Be careful if you're working with somebody that you don't drip that hot water on them or get the steam on them. And just go ahead and you just hold it up for a couple minutes until that adhesive releases. You see how easily that comes off now. Now, that was great for the paper, but what happens if we haven't gotten this printed part off yet? This is where we have to score the front. Now you see the pieces that we peeled off, they're almost plasticky, right?
Yeah, kind of rubbery.
They have a little rubbery stretch to them. And depending on the type of paper that you have, it may have that. You may even have a vinyl, which is real heavy. And what you're gonna have to do is allow room for that steam to get in there. And we do that with a scoring tool. It's just got these little spiky wheels on it.
The edges of these little parts that are going to poke into the wallpaper barely extend past the tool itself, because you don't want this gouging into the wallpaper, making holes in the wall. It's not going to do that. It's just enough to poke through the paper itself. So it's just barely overlapping the actual tool itself.
The edge of the tool itself. So you just want to go really gently like this with this over the entire face of the paper. Now we've opened it up and that steam can find its way through.
Right. So before, when Robin was doing this, we were hoping the steam would penetrate the paper and get to the back, which it did. But in some cases, especially if the wallpaper has been up for a really long time, that's going to be less likely maybe. So this allows openings in the paper for the steam to penetrate a little easier to get back to the adhesive. So as you can see, I'm having a little bit of trouble with this. But you know, there's a lot of factors that determine how easily this comes off. The type of adhesive, the wall, how well it was put up, how old it is. There's all kinds of things. The type of wallpaper, different adhesives. You know, they're all factors in determining how easy this is. But again, there's several options for removing this. We've showed you two. If you're trying these two and they're not working, you have a third option, and that is the chemical peel option.
Right, so you always have wallpaper strippers, just like you have a paint stripper. This is a chemical version. Remember, you have to go for safety first. If you're using a chemical, you want to make sure your hands are protected. You want to make sure your eyes are protected with either your glasses or your goggles, okay? If you are sensitive or have any breathing issues, you may want to wear a mask or a respirator. And all this is going to do is chemically loosen that adhesive. So we just kind of spray it. And we've gone ahead and let that sit for a little while. Let's see how it comes off. All right. Look at that. That peels right off, no problem.
But obviously, you know, some wallpaper is going to come off quickly, some isn't. Some parts of it might come off quickly and other parts won't. So it's just a step-by-step method. Take your time, be patient, and it's going to take as long as it takes, but you'll eventually get it all off. So again, this process requires patience. Some pieces came off easily, some didn't. That will probably be the case across your wall unless you're really, really lucky. Some will come off, some won't. You just got to take your time, reapply where needed, work it. You know, it's going to be a mess in some places, but eventually it will all come off. It may take some time.
Yep.
But pretty much that's it.
That's it. All right, so proper wall preparation ensures a smooth application and a long-lasting finish. So don't skip these steps. You're going to start by wiping down the walls with warm water and a mild detergent. You want to remove any dust, grease, or residue. Now for stubborn areas, especially if you're dealing with leftover glue from previous wallpaper, use a TSP cleaner, that trisodium phosphate. It's a heavy-duty cleaner. Rinse the walls with a wet cloth or sponge and allow them to dry completely. Then you're going to want to inspect for holes, cracks, uneven areas. Use spackle or joint compound to fill any holes or imperfections. Let it dry, then sand them smooth with fine grit sandpaper. Wipe the walls again and apply a wallpaper primer evenly. These steps improve adhesion, makes it easier to reposition the wallpaper during installation, and ensures an easier removal in the future if you ever want to change that wallpaper.
Now, applying primer is a critical step as well in preparing your walls for the wallpaper, and doing it correctly will save you time and effort later. Here's how you'll apply wallpaper primer step by step. First, it's essential to choose a primer specifically designed for wallpaper installation. Not just any primer will do. Look for one labeled for wall preparation and wallpaper adhesion. This type of primer creates a smooth, non-porous surface that ensures the wallpaper adheres properly and makes future removal easier. Keep in mind that many specialized primers are available only online, so plan ahead and order in advance to ensure it arrives in time for your project. Once you have the right primer, pour a portion of the primer into a clean paint tray to make it easier to access with your roller or brush. Using painter's tape along the edges of the ceiling, the baseboards, and other trim is not strictly necessary when applying wallpaper primer, but it is highly recommended, especially if you're aiming for a clean, professional finish, which I'm sure you are.
Right.
And using a small angled paintbrush, begin by applying primer around the edges of the wall, especially near the baseboards, the corners, and the ceilings where a roller might not reach effectively. Again, just like painting, it's kind of the same process.
Exactly.
Work carefully to ensure that you cover those areas evenly without leaving drips or thick edges. Once the edges are primed, switch to a paint roller with a medium nap roller cover, which will provide even coverage without leaving streaks. Dip the roller into the paint tray and roll it over the ridged edges inside to remove the excess primer. Again, just like paint, ensuring that the roller is fully loaded but not dripping. Apply the primer to the wall in long overlapping strokes, working from top to bottom. Use a consistent, even pressure to avoid streaks or uneven coverage. Start in one corner of the wall and work your way across to the other side, slightly overlapping each section to ensure full coverage.
Right. Now, after completing that first coat on all the areas that you're going to wallpaper, inspect the wall to ensure that there's no missed spots or uneven areas. If necessary, you can apply a second coat, especially if your wall surface is particularly porous, like brand new sheetrock, or if you're covering a darker paint color. Allow the primer to dry completely for at least 3 hours or whatever the manufacturer says, but it's usually better to let it go 24 hours to make sure that it's fully dry before you go ahead and proceed to hang the wallpaper. This drying time ensures the primer sets properly. It's going to create that smooth, sealed surface that improves wallpaper adhesion and again allows for easier repositioning during installation. Once the walls are primed, you can go back and remove the painter's tape before everything dries. This just makes it a little bit easier to remove. Take your time with this step. It's worth the extra effort.
And Robin, one real quick point on the primer.
Mhm.
We let ours dry for 24 hours and it was still a little tacky and sticky to the
Right.
feel. So don't let that fool you. Don't think that it's still wet. It's supposed to be like that.
Yeah, it
So
is.
when it dries, it still feels a little bit sticky.
Yeah, it's a little bit tacky once you put it on the wall. And again, it's for that adhesion. That's why it's supposed to be a
Right.
little bit tacky.
Now we're ready to move on to the wallpaper. Here's a fun fact. Not all wallpapers are created equal. There are a variety of styles and hanging types of wallpaper out there. We'll go over the different types of wallpaper and the proper steps to hang those at the end of the workshop. For this project, we've chosen a pre-pasted wallpaper. Let me tell you why this is a great choice for a project. Pre-pasted. This means the adhesive is already on the back of the wallpaper. You just need to activate it with water. There's no messy paste required. Each roll commonly covers about 56 square feet, measuring 20.5 inches wide by 33 feet long, so it's a real bang for your buck. Make sure to double check the dimensions of the wallpaper before ordering, as coverage varies slightly by manufacturer. Pattern repeat. This wallpaper has a drop match with a 20.9-inch repeat, making it easier to align the design for a seamless look.
Let's take a minute and explain what a drop match is, okay? A drop match is how the pattern aligns on the wall. It forms kind of a cascade effect down the wall. The drop match does not affect the way we hang the wallpaper, but you will need to be aware that you may need even more excess to align the pattern. In addition to a drop match, you may also hear the term drop, which is a little different. A drop is a full strip from floor to ceiling, including that extra that we always add for trimming. Now, this matters because we're going to need to know how many full strips or drops you'll get from each roll of wallpaper. You never want a horizontal seam in your strips of wallpaper.
No, you never want that.
No.
Now, it's important to account for the pattern repeat and how it affects both the design and the amount of wallpaper you'll need. When you calculate how much wallpaper to purchase, you'll want to consider how much of the roll is usable for full drops once you allow for the offset created by the drop pattern. For example, if your wall is 8 feet tall, which is 96 inches, and you add 4 inches of excess for the trimming at the top and bottom, each drop will be 100 inches. With a roll length of 33 feet, you'll divide the roll length by the height of each drop. So 396 divided by 100, or 3.96. This means you'll get 3 full drops per roll, with some extra for pattern matching. That's why it's always better to order at least 1 extra roll, possibly 2, especially for designs with large pattern repeats or drop matches. Unused rolls can typically be returned if unopened, but running out of wallpaper mid-project could mean missed match die lots or delays. A little extra planning ensures that you have enough wallpaper material for proper alignment and avoids unnecessary frustration.
Right. The first step in any wallpaper project is to calculate how much wallpaper you'll need to determine how many rolls you need to calculate the total wall area that you'll be covering. Now, be mindful that drop patterns often require more wallpaper than straight matches because of the extra material needed for pattern alignment. So let's look at this room. This office is currently painted wall to wall, but adding wallpaper to 2 accent walls will dramatically enhance the aesthetic, creating a transformative design that brings out the space's unique personality. To calculate the total wall area, you'll need to measure both walls. You'll need both the width and the height of each wall. We took both our width and height measurements in multiple locations to account for any irregularities or inconsistencies in the wall's dimension. Walls are rarely perfectly square or rectangle, and these variations can affect how the wallpaper fits and aligns.
That's right. Now, over time, walls can shift a bit or settle, resulting in slight curves, bulges, or uneven surfaces. By measuring at different points, you'll identify if the width of the wall and the height varies, which helps you account for those inconsistencies during the wallpaper cutting and installation. If you only measure at one spot and the wall is wider or taller elsewhere, you may cut your wallpaper strips too narrow or short, and this can lead to visible gaps or require patching, which can disrupt the overall look.
Definitely. Now we'll start on the first wall and take 3 measurements from left to right. Make sure when you're pulling the measuring tape tight across the wall and that you don't bend it at the corner. For the most accurate measurement, extend the measuring tape from one corner to the other and then butt the case of the measuring tape to the corner of the wall.
Now, if you notice, on the side of the measuring tape, there is usually a number. That number is the length of the measuring tape case itself. So what you'll do is add that number, whatever that is. It's usually around 3 inches.
Mm-hmm.
You'll add that to the full measurement on the tape where it stops coming out of the measuring tape body. You don't want to bend the tape, measure in the corner. You see people do this all the time,
All the time.
but that will not give you an accurate measurement.
Right. It doesn't give you exactly what you need, but that measurement of the case will give you a precise measurement. Now, for this project, we took measurements in 3 places on our first wall, and they were all the same width of 142 inches. We added the 3 inches from the measuring tape case to give us a width of 145 inches. Then, just like the width, we took 3 measurements of the height of the wall to make sure it was the same height all the way around. In this case, it turns out the height is even across the wall at 92 3/4 inches. Adding in the 3 inches from the measuring tape case, you get 95 3/4 inches, or almost 8 feet.
Now, don't worry about the window at this point. We'll go over the steps for how to hang around objects like windows, light fixtures, outlets, doors, and molding later in the workshop.
Yeah, next we're going to measure the second wall that we'll be covering. It's the same process as before, measure in 3 places from side to side as well as top to bottom. Again, the width is equal from side to side at 143 and a half, and the height is 96 inches from top to bottom. Next, we'll measure the second wall using the same process as before, checking the width and height in multiple spots. Then, we calculate the total area of both walls by multiplying their width and height, adding the totals, and converting square inches to square feet by dividing by 144, since there are 144 square inches in a square foot. Finally, we divide the total square footage by the coverage per roll. In our case, our rolls cover 56 square feet, so we will need 3.17 rolls. Always round up to ensure you have enough for alignment and potential errors. So we'll need 4 rolls for this project, and it's always wise to add in an extra roll just in case. The number of rolls will vary by project.
Robin, I hate to break this to you, but there is actually a much simpler way to calculate this, and you don't even need a calculator.
Oh my goodness. Please tell me.
When purchasing wallpaper from HomeDepot.com, there's actually a wallpaper calculator on the site that will take your wall measurements. You still got to measure and
Right.
input those, right? But it will generate how much wallpaper you will need for the project. It's super simple to use, and after you calculate how much wallpaper you need, you can actually go ahead and add the wallpaper to your cart, and it's going to be shipped directly to your home or picked up at the local Home Depot store. So a couple of easier options. You can do it either way, but that's a little bit easier. Just know the calculator takes the measurements in feet, and you'll want to round up to make the math a little bit easier. Also, don't forget to add a roll or 2 for the extra you want to have on hand.
Right. That is exactly what we did with this project. It's really easy to use. And not only did it calculate all the wallpaper we needed, but it was sent directly here to the studio. All right, shall we get into hanging this wallpaper now?
Let's do it.
Let's start with the first wall and work our way from the left corner and finish with the wall closest to the doorway in the right corner. For our project, we're only doing 2 walls, right? So we're starting on the most visible wall to ensure that the edges of that wallpaper are clean and seamless where they're most likely to be seen as soon as you walk through the door. Now, if we were papering an entire room, we would want to start in the least visible corner because unlike all the aligned seams throughout the room, wallpaper patterns will never match perfectly in the last corner.
Exactly. And the corner where the wallpaper ends often has overlapping seams or slight irregularities due to how the paper wraps around the edge. Keeping this corner out of direct sight reduces the chance that anyone will notice the imperfections.
Now, we know the wall height is 96 inches. We're going to go ahead and add 3 inches to the top and 3 inches to the bottom to allow for trimming. The additional material at the top and the bottom kind of acts as a buffer, making it easier to handle the strip while aligning it on the wall. You can secure the top of the strip first, knowing you'll have enough length to work with at the bottom.
Now we're ready to cut our first strip to 102 inches, which again accounts for the 96-inch wall height plus the extra 6 inches. Then, with a straight edge and a very sharp utility knife, can't stress that enough,
No.
cut the first strip cleanly. Be sure to number the top edge of the wallpaper on the back number 1 to maintain the design consistency throughout the project. You'll add the appropriate number to each subsequent strip.
Now, before activating the adhesive, it's a good idea to pre-cut all the full-length strips you'll need for the first wall and number them. This ensures the pattern aligns perfectly as you move from one strip to the next. By laying out the strips in order, you can verify that the design flows seamlessly, particularly important for drop match patterns where the alignment requires precision. All right, Mike, we've got these 2 strips of this fabulous watercolor garden wallpaper. Let's show everyone how to align the pattern so those flowers flow seamlessly from one strip to the next.
Absolutely, Robin. Now, with a design like this, you want to make sure that the blooms and the leaves line up perfectly between the strips. See how the large flower here is cut off at the edge of the first strip.
Right, and here on the second strip, we've got the rest of that flower. So we'll slide the second strip until the 2 halves of the flower align like this. There, a perfect match. The stems flow naturally now.
And look how the leaves on the left side extend from one strip to the other. That's exactly the look that we're looking for. You always want to check that the entire design connects without any gaps or awkward breaks. But some of the leaves may not look like they're exactly lining up, but everything else does. So look at the wallpaper overall and center it as best you can. Don't focus on one little area that might be a little bit off. No one will ever notice that. Once you're satisfied with the alignment, you can measure your next strip to ensure you have enough top and at the bottom. You must align first. Here's something to think about. If you don't work with 2 strips at the same time, if you just measure randomly and cut, when you get to the wall and they don't align, depending on how far you have to adjust it to make the alignment, you may come up a little short at the top or the bottom. It's easy to do that, especially with a bigger print like we've got. So it's really important. Once you cut the first strip, when you're measuring the second, check to see kind of how it aligns and then adjust it before you cut it. Other prints like this one, they're a lot more forgiving. There are gaps between the flowers and the stripes and the next line of flowers. So you've got a little bit more leeway on this one. And the pattern is much smaller, so the adjustments are much smaller.
So this is kind of a straight match, but you'll notice that between the small flowers and the large flowers, you only have maybe 12 inches, right? But with this pattern, our original pattern, between the big flower and the other small flower, you have that 20.9 inches that we were talking about where that pattern repeats. So you're going to have a lot more waste trying to line things up than you are when you only have a little bit of difference between the patterns.
Yep.
So that's why that extra is so crucial.
Some of these patterns, it's kind of tough when you first look at it to figure out where the top is because it almost looks like it could work either way, but the flowers for the most part and the stems are moving in this direction, which indicates this is the top. This one was a little bit tougher because it's a little bit more abstract, but what you don't want to do is just get in a hurry and take a strip and hang it only to realize later that it's upside down. Another reason to kind of really double check when you're lining it up to make sure that it all works.
And remember, patience is key here. It's worth taking your time to get this just right. The results will speak for themselves once it's on the wall. Keep in mind, though, that some patterns are more challenging to align than others. No matter the design, take your time to inspect and align each strip carefully. Marking each strip, as Mike mentioned, can be a lifesaver, ensuring that the pattern stays consistent and saving you from having to rehang a strip later. By choosing a pattern that matches your comfort level and following these steps, you'll create a stunning, cohesive look that's both polished and rewarding.
Now, let's talk about activating the adhesive on the back of this pre-pasted wallpaper. There are actually a few different methods to do this, depending on the type of wallpaper and your preference. The most common method involves filling a wallpaper trough or clean bathtub with lukewarm water and immersing the wallpaper strip for about 15 to 30 seconds. This allows the adhesive to fully activate. For a more old school approach, you can dunk the strip in a bucket of water, which works just as well. Alternatively, you could apply water using a new clean and wet paint roller, which gives you a little bit more control over how much water is applied. Another option is using a spray bottle to kind of mist the adhesive, but in my experience, it often doesn't provide enough water to activate the glue effectively, and it's really hard to kind of get that even. Obviously, it's not as easy to get that as even as you would with a paint roller. Now, the best method ultimately depends on your type of wallpaper that you're working with and your own comfort level.
That's a great breakdown, Mike. Let me add that the method you choose can also depend on the material of the wallpaper. For vinyl wallpaper, soaking in water tends to work perfectly because the material is durable and can handle being immersed. However, for textured or lighter materials, you might want to consider the paint roller method instead. This method is less messy and helps you avoid over soaking the paper, which could cause damage like tearing or stretching. With a roller, you can evenly distribute the water without oversaturating it, giving you better control during activation.
Now, let me show you how to activate the adhesive using a water-soaked paint roller. Start by filling a clean paint tray with lukewarm water. Dip a high-quality paint roller into the water, ensuring it's fully saturated but not dripping excessively. You want the roller wet enough to distribute the water evenly across the back of the wallpaper. Lay the wallpaper strip adhesive side up on a clean flat surface. Gently apply water to the entire surface of the adhesive, starting from the top and working your way down. Be sure to overlap your strokes slightly to ensure no spots are missed on the ends. It's best to roll over the center out and over the edges in one direction. If you roll back and forth over the edge, you're likely to pull up the paper because it's going to stick to the roller a little bit, and this can cause a crease or a fold in your paper, which you don't want. Once you've coated the entire strip, check to make sure the adhesive looks uniformly wet. If any areas seem dry, go over them again with the roller. Also look for puddling of the water. We ran into that a few times. We were going pretty evenly, we thought, but we ended up with some puddles here and there.
Yep.
If you do that, you just go over those again, get rid of that excess water, and spread it evenly across the paper. After that, you want to fold each end of the strip until it meets in the center with the glue sides together. This is called booking.
Right.
You then fold the entire booked wallpaper gently in half again. Just be careful not to crease any of the folds. Let the wallpaper rest for the time specified in the manufacturer's instructions, usually about 5 to 10 minutes. Booking helps the adhesive fully hydrate and ensure it adheres evenly when you hang it. Now we'll hang the first strip on the wall. Getting the first piece on each wall plumb is incredibly important since all the remaining pieces will be based off the first one. Now, if you're wondering what plumb is, it's similar to level, which is usually used to describe a horizontal line. Plumb means the same thing, but it references a vertical line. Okay, so it's kind of the same thing, just up and down as opposed to side to side.
Using the laser level is easy and saves time. You just measure out 20.5 inches from the corner in 3 locations, top, middle, and bottom. Mark those spots with a pencil, then align your level to match the dots on the wall, creating a perfectly plumb line. If your walls are not perfect, use the mark nearest to the corner to ensure the strip of wallpaper will go all the way into the corner of the wall.
Now, Robin, if you will do me a favor and hold Bob.
All right.
Now, you can also use a plumb bob instead of a laser level. You would mark the wall the same way, 20.5 inches from the left corner of the wall, which again is the width of our wallpaper. Hold or tape the string of the plumb bob to the wall at the pencil mark. Let the weighted end of the plumb bob hang freely, allowing it to stabilize naturally. Once it's steady, the plumb bob will point directly downward due to the gravity, creating a perfect vertical line. Ensure that the plumb bob is completely still before proceeding. Use a pencil to mark a small mark along the wall, starting from the top of the wall and working downward. Space the marks about 12 to 18 inches apart. Use a straight edge or ruler to connect those pencil marks, forming a continuous vertical line. This line serves as your guide for aligning the edge of your first wallpaper strip. This physical line serves the same purpose as the laser level line that we showed you earlier.
Right. So when you've established your plumb line, you want to then take that first booked piece of wallpaper and unfold only the top half. Now remember, we marked the top half with the number. So you're going to unfold the top half of the wallpaper and position it along the plumb line, leaving that excess overlap at the ceiling. Using the smoothing tool or a brush, gently press the wallpaper into the wall, working from the center of the strip outward to remove any air bubbles. Now avoid pressing too hard because you don't want to tear the paper or you don't want to stretch the paper. Work your way down until you get to the bottom half of the book piece of wallpaper. Open the lower fold and align the bottom half of the strip with that plumb line. Smooth it down to the baseboard, again working from the center outward to get rid of any bubbles or bumps.
Once the first strip is adhered, it's time to trim the excess wallpaper at the ceiling and baseboards for a clean, professional finish. Start by using a very sharp utility knife and a straight edge, such as a drywall knife or wallpaper smoother, to guide your cuts. Always use a fresh blade for this step, as a dull blade is much more likely to tear the wallpaper or create jagged edges. When trimming, it's important to maintain a smooth, continuous motion with the utility knife. Avoid lifting the blade off the paper as you cut. Slide the straight edge downward or across the wall as needed, ensuring the blade remains in place before continuing the cut. This technique helps maintain an even, seamless cut along the entire length.
Right. So, that takes a little bit of time, right, to cut slowly. We want to make sure that you understand that wallpaper is not necessarily a one-shot deal. You're gonna have time to adjust that piece of wallpaper because we found plenty of times we'd hang the top of the sheet and then when you pulled out the bottom of the sheet, it doesn't line up with the plumb line.
Right.
So we had to adjust it. So do know that there is time to adjust that wallpaper when it's on the wall. And if your walls are primed properly, you should be able to move that strip around for a good, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Less movement is best,
Right.
but you have the time to do it. Now, if there's excess wallpaper in the corner, you want to press it firmly into that crease where the walls meet using a smoothing tool or that drywall knife. This ensures that the paper adheres evenly and contours tightly to the corner. Place that straight edge along the corner where the wallpaper overlaps the adjacent wall. And using that straight edge as your guide, carefully trim the excess wallpaper with the utility knife. Work slowly and methodically, keeping that cut line straight and precise. Now, after trimming, press the edge of the wallpaper firmly into the corner, again to ensure that it adheres completely. Using that smoothing tool, eliminate any of those little air bubbles or wrinkles that may have formed during the cutting process. This attention to detail ensures a flawless, polished finish that will elevate the overall look of your wallpaper installation.
Now for the next strip, unfold again the top booked end as we did with the first piece and position on the wall as close to the correct position as you can, tight to the edge of the first strip. Then align the pattern at the seam with the previous strip as we showed you earlier. Now, depending on the wallpaper you have purchased, you may need to allow for a slight overlap if the manufacturer's instructions say so. Our wallpaper did not require any type of overlap, so we installed the strips seam to seam. Properly aligned seams ensure the pattern matches accurately and avoids unnecessary thickness that overlaps. Now, slide the strip as needed to ensure the pattern aligns and there is no gaffer overlap in the seam. Continually rub your hands, again, along that seam to align the strips. You will have to make small adjustments along the length of the strip. That is normal. Continue hanging your booked strips across the wall. Now, we talked a little bit about tearing. I wanted to mention one more thing about tears. It's not out of the question that you're going to tear the wallpaper,
You might.
especially maybe at the bottom or at the top. That's usually okay, because don't panic is the message, because you can simply just put that back in place because it's glued
Right.
and you're able to adjust it. If you tear a little piece, just put it back in place and make sure that it's stuck on there really well. Don't think that you have to replace the entire strip of wallpaper. That's generally not the case. We ran into a situation at the bottom where we had a little tear. We just pressed it against it, put it back together. You can never see it.
Yeah, and again, like we've been saying all along, that sharp blade for trimming is key. If you feel that that paper starts to pull at all, stop,
Stop.
change your blade. Now, the blades that we used the snap-off blades so that it was real easy to snap off a blade and make sure you have a fresh, sharp blade. Make sure you have extras of them. That sharp blade is going to help you with that clean edge. But if it does pull a little bit or wrinkle a little bit, you can usually pat it back into place. And depending on your design or where it is, you won't even notice it when it's all done. Now, if you encounter an obstacle like a light switch or a power outlet or maybe the window, don't worry about these things. It's the same process, but just with a few extra steps. For light switches and power outlets, you're going to hang the strip right over the switch or outlet and smooth it out as before. Then you kind of want to feel the area where the outlet or switch is. Remember, we have already taken off the faceplates, so there's a hole in the wall around your switch or outlet. Trace along that edge with your finger, kind of indenting the paper a little bit to denote where to cut. Using that fresh, sharp blade, cut out the wallpaper in an X fashion from corner to corner over that switch or outlet. And then you can just trim off the excess. You always want to go a little bit smaller than the opening because you can cut more off, but you can't add more back on. Now, the switches and outlet faceplates will cover all of your edges. When you get to windows and doors, what you want to do is hang the strip over the window as if the window weren't there, smoothing it into place as usual above and alongside the window. Using that sharp blade, carefully trim the wallpaper along the edges of the window frame, leaving a clean border like we have been doing at the ceiling and the floor. Smooth the edges with your smoothing tool to ensure full adhesion. You'll notice how we've come to the edge of the first wall. So how are we going to handle this corner, Mike?
It's a great question, Robin. When you reach the edge of a wall like this and transition into a corner, you want to handle it with precision. We were fortunate that the space from the last drop to the corner was almost a full sheet wide. There was only about a half an inch that would not go around the corner. So you want to hang that strip, aligning it carefully with the last piece. Smooth it into place, ensuring it wraps around the corner just a little bit. We used our thicker smoothing tool as a straight edge to cut the wallpaper down the corner to leave just a little in the corner. The key here is to keep it aligned and avoid creating wrinkles or bubbles as you work the wallpaper into that corner. Once you wrap the wallpaper into the corner, take the next full strip and start fresh on the adjacent wall. Use your plumb line as you did on the first strip on the first wall in that first corner to ensure the new strip is straight and aligns seamlessly. That overlap from the first strip helps hide any imperfections, and it ensures you don't have gaps where the corner transitions.
Okay, Mike, you said we were fortunate that our paper only overlapped the corner a little. What happens if we're not that lucky, right? What do we do if there's like a half a sheet of excess in the corner? Can I just wrap it through the corner and go on to the adjacent wall?
You can. You certainly can, but you shouldn't.
Okay.
You never want to wrap wallpaper through a corner. Wallpaper can shrink as it dries, and that will pull the paper away from the corner a little bit, leaving a gap or a bubble behind the paper in that corner.
Gotcha.
This is not a good look, and it weakens the corner, making a future tear or hole more likely. If you do not have a full or almost full sheet to reach the corner, then measure the distance from the last installed sheet to the corner. Multiple measurements are best. Again, add about 1/4 of an inch to the largest measurement to make sure you have a slight wraparound in the corner. Cut your piece lengthwise to this measurement using a straight edge and a new blade or sharp scissors for a clean cut. You will use the remainder of that piece to start the next wall. Remember, we need to set a new plumb line on this wall, so measure the width of the remaining piece of paper and set your plumb line using the laser level or plumb bob based on the width of that.
Right. The corners are rarely perfectly square. So this method accounts for any unevenness and ensures that the transition between walls looks seamless. It's nearly impossible to perfectly align a corner, but that's okay. Even the pros are a little off when it comes to the corners. You should never even notice any discrepancy when you step back and look at the room as a whole. With a little care and patience, you'll hardly notice the corner at all once the wallpaper is up.
Now, you're going to repeat the same process as you did on the corner wall, lining up the patterns of each strip, accounting for the extra inches at the top and the bottom, smoothing out from the center to the edges, trimming the strips by using a straight edge and a sharp blade. When we reach the doorway, we'll treat it exactly the same as we did with the window, using a sharp blade. You carefully trim the wallpaper along the edges of the door frame, leaving a clean border. Smooth the edges with your smoothing tool to ensure full adhesion.
That first strip came about 6 inches over the edge of the door.
Right.
So we set it as best we could, hit it up top, and then we had to use our straight edge. Now, when you get down to like the corner, okay, where the top of the door jamb and the side of the door jamb come together, sometimes it's easier to take your scissors and cut at an angle into that corner to separate those pieces so that you can lay them flat.
So they're not
And
bunched up.
yeah, so it's not all bunched up. And then, exactly as we did before, use that straight edge. Now, we got a little bit lucky that the width of our door was wider than a full strip of wallpaper. So we had one area above the door that instead of needing a full strip was only, I don't know, maybe 12 inches high, 14 inches high. This is a great time to go back and look through your excess to see if you can find a piece that matches your pattern. Remember, you got to line your pattern up and is big enough so you don't have to cut a full strip for that. Okay, so we were fortunate enough to go back through our scrap and find a perfect piece that fit above that door. And then we used another full piece on the other side of that door, made it a lot easier. So when you reach that last strip, measure the distance from the edge of the last full strip that you installed to the corner of the wall. It should fit snugly into the corner. However, if there's any excess wallpaper that goes over the edge of the corner onto the next wall, you'll want to use that sharp blade and a straight edge to trim off the excess. Now, if you end up with a large piece of extra in that corner, it may be easier to cut off some of the extra to make it a little more manageable, right? So if you have an overlapping piece that's maybe half a sheet, maybe you cut some of that down to make it a little bit easier to work with going into that corner. Use a sharp utility knife and a straight edge and carefully trim the excess wallpaper at the corner. You want to cut right where the wallpaper meets the adjacent wall, creating a clean, straight line. Now, to prevent peeling, you can also use a small amount of clear wallpaper seam adhesive along the edge. Smooth it down with a seam roller or your smoothing tool. This will secure the edge and keep it looking sharp for the long haul. Now, corners are tricky, but this approach keeps everything looking seamless and aligned. Even if you're stopping the wallpaper in a corner, it'll look intentional and tidy.
Now, once both walls, or all your walls in your case maybe, are covered, you want to wipe down the wallpaper with a clean, damp sponge to remove any excess adhesive. Go over the seams with the seam roller for extra security. Allow the wallpaper to fully dry before replacing your outlet covers or any kind of fixtures, usually about 24 hours. Now, don't forget to turn the power back on, and that's it. You've successfully transformed your room with stunning wallpaper. With these steps, your room will have a professional, polished look that will last. Oh, and remember, if your wallpaper doesn't stick on the first try, you probably weren't adhering to these instructions.
Really?
So we brought it back to the beginning. You did it at the beginning, I did it at the
You know, I see what you did there. Now, earlier, Mike said there are different types of wallpaper and varying hanging methods. There's a variety out there, and each one comes with its own pros and cons. So let me take a minute and break it down for you. We've already discussed the benefits of pre-pasted wallpaper and how to hang it. There is also peel and stick wallpaper. Basically, think of it like a giant sticker for your wall.
Okay, now that sounds really easy.
Well, it is. There's no paste, no water, just peel off the backing and stick it to the wall. It's super renter friendly since it can be removed without damaging the paint. Plus, it's low mess, which is a win-win in my book. The downside, it doesn't work as well in humid areas. So if you want to hang it like in a bathroom or something like that. You also have to be precise when aligning it because the adhesive is strong. It's recommended when you put up peel and stick that you only peel off about 12 inches of the backing at a time and kind of get that set in place and then peel off more as you move down. If you peel off the entire backing and try to stick it, it's like taking a long piece of tape and then trying to manipulate it and it sticks to itself and it becomes a sticky snake and you can't do anything with it. Same thing will happen. So you want to just take off a little bit at a time.
Like we said, there are pros and cons. Even though this seems like a simpler process, and it is, it's also easier, in my opinion, to make a mistake. Because like you said, if you stick it and you don't like it, you're kind of stuck. Because it's not going to come off as easy as the slimy wallpaper, adjustable wallpaper that we talked about.
That's true. But like I said, great for renters that really want to change the look without damaging the walls underneath. The next is unpasted wallpaper. Now, this requires a little bit more effort because you need to apply the wallpaper paste yourself.
Now, Robin, what's the benefit of going through that extra step?
Okay. Unpasted wallpaper is going to give you a little bit more flexibility, okay? Especially for custom paste options or tricky surfaces or heavy papers. Plus, the paste adds a little bit of durability. It's a little bit thicker, okay? It's definitely messier, and you have to know whether your wallpaper is what they call paste the wall or paste the paper because the method changes.
Got it. So pre-pasted for ease, peel and stick for renters, unpasted for flexibility.
My favorite, definitely the pre-pasted for most rooms. It's just a really good balance of convenience and durability. But honestly, it really depends on the project. The right wallpaper can transform a space, no matter which type you choose.
And I would have to agree that pre-pasted, mainly because of the adjustability. Especially if you've never done this, you're going to make a few little mistakes. You'll want to be able to make some adjustments. So I agree. Now let's go over the tools and materials you'll need for this project. The full list is on your screen, but we just want to highlight the ones that we think will make this job easier.
I think the first one for sure is the smoothing tool, right? So we actually got a kit for this. So this came in a whole kit. You can see it's got the seam roller, the smoothing tool, and the brush. There were a couple other things in the kit as well. Really inexpensive, and these are the things that we used most often.
Constantly, yeah.
Constantly. I mean, we were always looking for these. I think the knife, again, the snap-off blade knife. You could get them in different sizes, whatever is more comfortable for you, but the snap-off blade is definitely the best option because it's fast to change it out, and you can keep that sharp edge that we really, really need. And the last one that I think is really important is that laser level. I mean, if you don't think you're going to use it for anything else, I understand, but that laser level to find that plumb line is one of the greatest things that we had. Now, there's also some materials that you're going to need in addition to the tools. Now, depending on the type of wallpaper you chose and the condition of your walls, this list may vary a little bit, but I'm going to highlight some of the more important materials. Obviously, the wallpaper. Choose your wallpaper first, whatever type that you want. The next most important thing is that wallpaper primer. At one time, people used to call that sizing. So if you hear the term sizing, that is wallpaper primer. It's designed to do the same thing. But there are different types for different kinds. Do a little research on your primers. There's different types. Remember, you want a wall covering primer or a sizing, not your typical paint primer. It's totally different. The other materials, again, it's gonna be things like protecting your surfaces, drop cloth, plastic sheeting. And the one thing we really didn't talk about a lot was a work surface or a work table. We just used an 8-foot folding plastic table. It's great because you could just wipe it off, right? It was really easy. You can create an area on the floor. You can use an existing table that you have. Just make sure that you keep it covered and protected from the water. I know a lot of people who have done this like on a dining room table and just, put things down to protect it.
And again, the longer the table, the better, because what you don't want is a really short table, because you're going to be adjusting that paper as you roll it and wet it. You're going to be sliding it off the edge of the table to get to the rest of the paper. You don't want that dangling down too far and getting on the floor. You're going to get dust and other stuff in the glue. That's not a good thing. So the longer the table is, the less the paper has to lean off the edges as you do the wetting, and that's really, really important.
Remember, you're going to be cutting on that surface, so put something down to protect it. You can also find a list of tools and materials in that resource guide linked below. Now that we've gone over the tools and materials, let's answer a few of those frequently asked questions. Can you wallpaper over or paint over wallpaper?
Again, you can, but it depends. Wallpapering over existing wallpaper can work in certain situations, but it's not always the best option. First, the existing wallpaper must be smooth, securely adhered to the wall, and free from any peeling, bubbling, or loose edges. If the wallpaper is already showing signs of wear, adding a new layer on top will likely create more problems in the future, right? That makes sense. You also need to consider the type of wallpaper that's currently on the wall. For example, a non-coated wallpaper, such as those made of paper without a vinyl layer, can often be papered over with success. However, vinyl coated wallpaper present challenges because their non-porous surface can prevent proper adhesion of the new wallpaper.
Right.
It's crucial to check how many layers of wallpaper are already on the wall. If there are more than 2 layers, it's highly recommended to remove them all and start fresh. For the best and most durable results, it's generally better to remove the old wallpaper and start with a clean slate. Next question, Robin.
Yeah.
Can I wallpaper over a freshly painted wall?
I would say hold off. You can, but you want to wait a little bit. If your walls have been freshly painted, you'll want to wait at least 3 to 4 weeks for that paint to fully cure before applying wallpaper. Now, once that paint is cured, it's essential to still prepare the walls for wallpaper by applying that wallpaper primer. So, Mike, how much working time do we have with the adhesive after it's been wet?
Well, it depends. It really depends on the type of adhesive that you're working with, but generally speaking, you have about 5 to 10 minutes of working time after wetting the adhesive. This time frame allows you to position and adjust the wallpaper on the wall before the adhesive starts to dry and set. Now, for pre-pasted wallpaper, the glue is activated with water and its working time may vary based on the factors like humidity, room temperature, and the brand of wallpaper that you're using. For unpasted wallpaper, where you're using your own paste, the working time can vary even more depending on the type of paste. Some provide longer flexibility, while others set more quickly.
Okay, so we talked about cutting like the strips for an entire wall, right? And we kind of activate those. Should I activate and book all of those before I hang them, or should I kind of do them a couple at a time?
I would do a couple at a time. Again, you're dealing with this time factor, right? If you wet and book them all and you put up the first one and you're having issues and you got to make a lot of adjustments, you got to take it down and put it back up. time is passing on those
Right.
other strips. So you want to do this in batches, 1 or 2 at a time.
All right, let's go over what we accomplished today. We showed you how to prepare your walls for the best results. We demonstrated how to remove old wallpaper using 3 different methods: scraping, steaming, and chemical removal. We also walked through cleaning and prepping your walls for a smooth, durable wallpaper installation, including filling holes, sanding, and applying a primer. We covered how to measure your walls accurately to calculate how much wallpaper you'll need, ensuring we accounted for irregularities and avoided costly mistakes. For hanging new wallpaper, we explained how to cut and prepare strips, activate adhesive for pre-pasted wallpaper, and properly book the wallpaper for best application. We then covered the step-by-step process for aligning patterns, handling tricky areas like corners and windows, and achieving seamless seams using drop match wallpaper. We also shared valuable tips for troubleshooting common challenges like aligning patterns, trimming excess wallpaper in corners, and ensuring no gaps or bubbles are left behind. We discussed the tools and materials needed and the different types of wallpaper. And finally, we answered some of your frequently asked questions. Whew, that's a lot.
That's a lot. Breathe.
I'm gonna.
Now, as always, we want to thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions not covered today, reach out to us at workshopslive@homedepot.com or visit the Home Depot's website for more resources. And remember, the key to success is preparation and patience. Thank you for watching, and as always, thank you for shopping at the Home Depot. We'll see you in the next how-to workshop.